What's up everyone, welcome to the next lesson. Today we are discussing the lighting, another lesson purely on 3D. This lesson is perfect for everyone who needs like a, cheat sheet on daytime exterior lighting. It's incredibly important to reach a certain level of realism for AI to work with. That's why we break everything from start to finish, and without further ado, let's get at it. Alright, so here's our scene. We are already in the interactive. As you can see, as with interiors, we have a pretty realistic lighting setup, and that's quite easy to do so. Here we actually have an HDRI, it's PG Sky 1714, and there are some minor adjustments to it. One of them is the exposure. We can modify the brightness of HDRI, just like we did with the exposure in the frame buffer. If we change this to -1.5 and set this one to 0, it will be exactly the same. Generally, most HDRIs nowadays are well calibrated, so we don't need to change anything here in settings. However, in the older HDRIs that are poorly calibrated, you can try adjusting gamma. Gamma allows you to change the relationship between the sun and the sky. By decreasing the gamma, we increase this contrast. We can immediately see the light to shadow ratio kind of changes. You know, everything now is overexposed. But if we compensate for the exposure a bit, we see that suddenly the brightness of the light compared to the sky becomes almost unnatural. The brightness is significantly increased all of a sudden. And on the other hand, if we increase the gamma, we'll get a flatter contrast. Meaning the image will appear flat in terms of lighting. It will give an impression that the sun might be a bit hazy or the sunlight isn't as intense. But yeah, I thought it's worth mentioning the gamma, even though we use the default settings, as simple as it gets. So let's take a look at the sun direction right now. And to discuss this, we will do a little trick. It's incredibly useful and it's kind of weird, but hear us out. We will make everything apart from the architecture black.
This will make choosing the optimal sun direction so much easier.
Oftentimes the foreground looks bright and it gathers too much attention, so that's a nice way to make our life a little bit easier. Whichever engine you are using, you can just exclude materials, you can render selected, whatever. Just do it like so and it will be much easier to digest. Anyway, currently we are lighting the left side of the building. We can observe how the character of the glass facade changes as we tweak the HDRI a bit, as we rotate it. So here I will rotate it 1/10 of a turn and the light will slowly hide behind the building. And in most cases, we don't want to have the sun behind the architecture, especially in daytime scenario. The main hero of our image, which is the building, will be covered in shadows and it looks just boring, you know? When you have sunset, that's a different scenario, but at this point, it's just not attractive, you know? At some point, we are getting some sunlight from the right side, and we'll start to see it appearing on the right edge. And now we are getting into an optimal direction. One of the facades is bathed in sun, and we can see the translucency of the hanging plants. They get additional light, and it's definitely more attractive, more optimal. And at some point, sun hits both facades at the same time, and it gets suboptimal, unfortunate almost. The building looks flat, similar suboptimal scenario to the backlighting. Yeah, and eventually we return to what we had at the beginning, one facade strictly in the sun, other one in the shade, and this way we can show all the materials and their properties both while being in the sun and in the shadow. Now we can understand the behavior of glass, wood, metals, and share this bigger context for the viewer. Everything is more dimensional, more informative, and just interesting. Now we are revealing the surroundings again.
And everything looks natural. There's no bright spots on the pavement. Trees also have some dark shadows and a little bit of a translucency going on, but normally it would be a shining mess.
The foreground will be super bright and it will make this whole image super confusing. So let me show you how we did it, how it usually looks like before you handle it. If we look now at our scene, a few things will stand out. Around the camera, we have large boxes or planes. They affect the lighting in a big way. If we turn them off, we will immediately see how bright this area is and how strange it looks in terms of color temperature. When you see the scene, it ends here. There's nothing behind the camera, and that's a very common scenario. We don't build the scenes from all the degrees, so we just need a slice of reality. But in real life, there would be some buildings, trees, and other objects that would cast shadows. That's why we have those boxes. That's simple as it gets. We don't need complicated geometry. The simple boxes will do the trick and they will render faster. Additionally, apart from these boxes, we have a few pseudo clouds. They also cast some shadows on top of the trees. They are also kind of improving the depth and the differentiation between the trees that we talked about in the first lesson of this series. Anyway, we have another object on the left side. As we can see, this one is cutting off a lot of sunlight as well. Kind of did the same thing as the big box did, but targeting the lower area right here. Okay, that's it for fixing the foreground. It's stupidly simple, but it works. We get the shadows, we get the contrast, and the light hierarchy kind of works, you know, the aerial perspective. So let's get back and turn on those boxes again. And here I want to take a little bit of a pause. You just saw what's the lighting setup, you know, and we made the decision about the sun direction. We fixed the foreground, we had the power to control all of it, you know, with the boxes. But in the middle of this, we made one kind of hidden decision. See, when we choose the direction that works for the architecture, we also choose how our scene is going to look. Sure, we chose the light coming from the side, we agreed that that's when the architecture looks good, but that very side lighting made a whole impact on the materials in the scene. Okay, let me show you a quick example here. These are renderings from our masterclass, exterior masterclass, and you can clearly see that they have both side lighting. You can see the right facade is in the sun and the left one is in the shadows. But the thing is, one of them has the sun far away behind the mountains, and the other one has the sun coming from behind the camera, actually, from the opposite side. And we can clearly see they differ quite substantially, you know? If we just put everything in black, architecture would look good, but the scene are totally different. Like, notice how the greenery or stone looks like, how saturated the colors are, what's the difference between them, how strong the micro contrast is in the left scene. This can only happen when the sun is visible on the sky or close to it. The result is this punchy image with strong contrast and vivid colors. Usually it's commercially very attractive. And in the second scenario, the colors are drastically different, often looking kind of washed out, but also more natural. The surfaces appear much flatter. The color of the sky is definitely deeper and darker here. And this is because we have the sun on the other side. And the brightest part of the sky is behind the camera. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other. There are just different looks, and they correspond to where the sun is and how it interacts with the materials. Before you approach a daytime scenario, you can decide which look kind of works better for you, you know? You can have many directions that are good for architecture, but depending how your materials should look, you can choose either from the side or from the back, you know? That's all. Beautiful. Moving on. Let's go back to the interactive. We also have some overrides set up in the rendering. I turned them off before. Yeah, these overrides are essentially the same HDRI for direct reflection and refraction. They deepen the color of the sky. We can put it here. Usually we separate the illumination from the sky because sky is very, very important. So we want to like zone in on it. And right now it looks more realistic, more commercial. One tip here, sometimes you might want to shift the hue a little bit, check if the sky isn't too green or magenta. So for direct visibility, definitely change it manually and see how it looks after you fixed all the foreground stuff and all of that. Yeah, we are slowly bringing this lesson home. There's the case of artificial lighting again, the relight in the interior. We had relight in the exterior, and as you've imagined, this is the last step. So we use it to illuminate the lobby, so it's not just like a dark spot of the image. Right now, it may be realistic, because sunlight, of course, it's like hundreds of or even thousands of times stronger than indoor light. However, for the commercial aspect of the image, we want to change it a little bit. We want to cheat. We want to increase the readability of the lobby, so we want the lights to be here. We also have a few spheres to illuminate the facade, making the streets a little bit more attractive. So yeah, let me reveal those. Notice how the interiors, the lobby, the oranges, the entire facade gets brighter. I think it's a benefit to the image, even though it's a bit of a fake. But anyway, we use regular light spheres. Each visibility is hidden. They only affect the diffuse to enhance the overall ambience of the dark street. And we have a lot of lights inside the building as well, just some light planes in this case, or sometimes we also put spheres. And bam! This space is definitely no longer the dark hole it was a moment ago. Nice, we are slowly wrapping up. One last thing, we can mention the tone mapping. It's quite simple. We have Filmic applied. Without Filmic, we can see that the tonal ranges are off the scale. Suddenly we get this overexposed elements on the squared and sidewalks, and notice how before it looks like all unattractive. All of those colors are before. But yeah, once we apply Filmic, the colors shift significantly and land in much more appealing regions. And similar to what we discussed in the interior tone mapping, you can test ACES, Reinhardt, you can add curves and see what works best for you. This is an interesting case because we didn't use ACES, we used Filmic just to have different level of control. So yeah, that's a fun fact here. And that's that, another beefy lesson. Hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one, kind of a shorter one, but still pretty sweet. We go into post-production next, so yeah, see you there.